democracy of a country, 30 million plus, it can be noisy, but we've made some significant progress. So it may not be where we want it to be, but I'm sure you agree with me that in spite of it, we've made some significant gains. And if you look in the sub-region, it still seems we are a shining example of what a democracy like ours can be.
A lot of the things we are usually talking about is based on perception. And for some time now, people don't feel that they trust government officials. Probably because the kind of governance we have chosen for ourselves has not delivered the dividends that we expect.
Young people must always know that their voices matter, but how you go about your voice and pushing it is instructive. So when you push it and you push it hard, you are strong enough, those who matter will hear it.
As young people, when we don't speak up, we give our leaders the opportunity to perpetuate whatever bad thing or the bad governance and leadership they offer us. They will still be giving us the bare minimum. Meanwhile, we are demanding the best from them.
Hello there and welcome to CDD-Ghana's Youth Unplugged podcast. My name is Jude Duncan. On this show, we bring you all the very important conversations that matter to you, trying to look at perspectives from a youth viewpoint. Today on the show, we'll be discussing Africa's youth bulge. Why is this a main issue? Because if you look at the data, 60% of the population in Africa are 25 years and below. And guess where all of these energies are being channeled? On online platforms. So what's the main issues? What are the conversations being had there? Are they ones that are, aimed towards building or helping conversations at the national forefront? All that and more on today's episode of CDD-Ghana's Youth Unplugged podcast. Of course, it's brought to you by the International Development Research Center, IDRC, in collaboration with CDD-Ghana. I'll be introducing my guest pretty shortly, and it's important to also mention that all of the views that will be espoused here on the show are predominantly or solely that of our guest and do not represent that of CDD-Ghana or the IDRC. Again, my name is Jude Duncan, joining me as my wingman all through this. Kweku?
Yeah.
No, you did.
I did.
You sure?
I did.
No.
I think it's an interesting thing because a lot of conversations about democracy, they are being muffled. Okay, so it's important that we continuously talk about democracy, especially as it relates to young people, because young people have a lot of views. And if they are not represented at the decision-making table, of course, there are a few of them there, then their voices must go to those who made the decision. And that is why CDD, IDRC, putting this together so that the voice of the youth, young people, is properly reflected in our democratic journey. And so that is why this is a very big conversation.
Amazing. I love this really robust opening remark. I must say I've been joined by the Joshua Atavinore, who I must say, back in the day was the guy at the University of Ghana. Now he's a lawyer and he's doing a lot in the human rights and civil society space. Yeah. Joshua, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Always a pleasure to talk about democracy and development issues.
I love that. Also joining us in studio, we have Justice Jokoto Alo.
Big man. Alo. Big man. I mean, if you go to the University of Ghana right now, his footprints are still there.
Oh, in Commonwealth, I understand. And beyond.
No.
I mean, Alo could not have been a vandal.
Oh, you couldn't? You're not a vandal.
I can be a vandal.
Don't tell me. That's not true. Because that will reduce your standing.
No. I belong to the best hall on campus. Forget about Commonwealth Hall. Forget about Saba. I belong to the Elizabeth Francis Say Hall.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's the one I belong to. That's the. So in recent times, when it comes to student leadership, Elizabeth Francis Say has been producing competent leaders in UG. Yeah.
So he's the vice president of advocacy and in charge of advocacy and partnerships of the Commonwealth Students Association. Working for Commonwealth. And I was thinking, it would have been a perfect, seamless kind of. No, what Francis said here some way.
No. Say is the place.
It's okay. The Joshua, I'll start off with you, right? Yeah. Kweku gave us a brilliant opening remark. All the conversations are online. young people are driving the conversations.
Yep.
We've seen that in Nigeria. We've seen that in South Africa.
Kenya.
We've seen that in Kenya. We've seen that here in Ghana. I recall when we were back in school, remember the famous Mahatma Gandhi statue issue? I was a student journalist with Radio Universe. I covered it extensively. You are at the forefront of student politics at that time, where students led the conversation around, their issues they had with the statue being there. Fast forward, we've seen Occupy Julobi House here in Ghana.
Yep.
We saw End SARS in Nigeria. Why is it so important that we continue the conversation around national issues digitally and online?
I think I'll look at it from 2 points. First of all, who are the majority of people that you're serving? If it's young people, you must definitely listen to them. In the end, if you're looking at the approach to which young people can make their grievances known, and you're looking at the transformation or innovations happening, for which reason a lot of young people probably want to use social media to air their voices, so be it. Because consistently for some time, you would have seen that when it comes to physical protest, it rarely happens.
Yeah.
And when it happens, it's taking political lanes. However, social media provides sort of an opportunity for people who may not necessarily identify or be affiliated to a political party to still be able to register their grievances for government to listen. And I think the bigger aspect of it also then is that, listen, let's get into it. Let's get into politics. For which reason, sometimes when you look at student leadership, it is an opportunity to fine-tune yourself, manage the excesses that comes with being a young person, and trying to see how you can also really assume leadership within the small spaces you find yourself, or even at the national level. And it may not necessarily even be about politics, but it could be in different aspects of development. And I think that the conversation circling around young people is not a misplaced one.
But is it enough to say young people can lead a conversation online and not show up for actual protest? You know how the psyche of the political class work when they see numbers marching at the ministry, at the presidency. So from your standpoint, is it okay to say, see, join the conversation online, and if you don't even show up, that's fine? Does it work that way?
I mean, we would expect it to work that way because it's an opportunity to give feedback to how governance is being run. You don't need to be there physically. And for a lot of people, being there physically also comes with a lot of concerns. Yeah. You're afraid you'll probably be brutalized by the police. You're afraid something could, the entire gathering could degenerate into something that you don't want to be hurt. But I think for the purposes of governance, it really doesn't matter how the grievances get to you.
Yeah.
Whether people mobilize physically or they're using digital platforms to relay their concerns, you would expect the government to listen.
To act.
Because this is a democracy, and what matters is the voice.
To be fair, we've seen government change their positions on issue based on online movements, right?
Absolutely,
So the force is not really about where it's taking place or the shape or even the form.
Yeah.
It's about what is being said.
Yes.
Interesting. Let me come to you, Justice. Again, we've seen how some of these things have played out. I gave the opening background. You saw it in Nigeria, even in Ghana, fix the country, right? Will you say it is a very necessary approach? Necessary, and I'm choosing my words carefully. Necessary in the sense that go online and talk about it. We've seen the way some of these things take form. I don't even want to talk about the insults, but we see the way some of the young people go about the campaign, blatant insults, attacks here and there. Do you feel like it's okay, or that we've seen in the past?
So, Jude, for me, I believe that with the kind of performative politics that we have in our country, at times some of these things are necessary in order to make our leaders work and for them to do what is expected of them. Because some of our leaders, if the youth do not show up online or in person, do not lead this charge, there is no way they're actually going to meet the very needs they were actually elected for. They come with a lot of promises, and when they get the power, they go to bed. they actually, I don't want to say they go into honeymoon, but then they actually get into that state where they want to see some sort of charge from the youth before they function. So I believe that these things are necessary. When you look at fees must fall in South Africa, it was necessary for the government to be able to do something about the high fees of students. Fix the country in Ghana. It was necessary so that the government will see that the youth are not happy with you playing cha-cha and gambling with their future and then their destiny. And as young people, when we don't speak up, we give our leaders the opportunity to perpetuate whatever bad thing or the bad governance and leadership they offer us. They will still be giving us the bare minimum. Meanwhile, we are demanding the best from them. The Arab Spring, you saw young people massing up to ensure that leaders do something about the very things they believe are wrong. And you know, the reason why I like Kofi Annan is that he charges or encourages young people to rise up and do something about the things they believe are wrong. So if young people are showing up for demonstration online, they are pushing a particular hashtag to ensure that the right thing are done.
Justice.
It ensures that they are actually calling for something to be done about the things they believe are
Interesting.
wrong.
My question to you was also as a result of some of the things we see being said. So, for example, last year we saw Occupy Julobi House.
Yeah.
Government took serious exception to the name of the protest.
So-
and we even heard government officials say one of the reasons why the perceived hostile approach from government was because of the approach of and we see sometimes harassment, we see name callings, and often it's characterized by some allegations that can't even be substantiated. So will you say that, maybe we need to really look some of the approach in taking on national issues, in the digital space?
So Jude, I've lived all my life in Greater Accra. I identify myself as a Gan, not biologically. I understand what Julobi means. So if you have been given a position and you are using that position to plunder people, to misappropriate state resources, what should we call you? We should call you Julo.
Is that
No.
is that what
No, we should
government
no,
disagreed
no,
with?
we should clearly call you Julo because you are using something that is not yours for your personal interest. You are becoming a Julobi.
So
at times some of
administration they were
at times
plundering.
some
Is that what
some
you're
of
saying?
the names. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that it is the action that calls for the name, and the names will actually ensure that they do the right thing. They were not happy with the Julobi, so it will ensure that
To
they
ginger you to,
of course.
But
So
why? So the point is that government disagreed with that tag. So you going ahead to say
so the question
they had
too
every
is,
right to.
no, Jude, the question too is that tag necessarily wrong in context?
Yeah, but
I don't believe it is wrong in context because young people saw that government is doing there were some officials from government that were doing particular things that they can be described as Juloy. You get me? So that is it. They can be described as Julobi. So yeah, I think it's a perfect description.
Kweku, I'll come back to you shortly. Right? But let me just go back to the Joshua. You did a lot of work during your student
Yeah.
days. Running for office, political mobilization, community.
Not winning. That's
Pardon,
fine.
no,
can
no. In UG, once you even have the audacity to run for it, is a big thing. 40,000 community,
Yeah, we both
plus.
didn't win then.
Charlie. But anyway, that's on the lighter note. Yeah. I want you to talk us through how this builds public trust in a democracy. He talks about Occupy Julobi. I remember back in the day, Nana B, he vehemently disagreed with the tag. Some even said it was disrespectful, right? How does a protest like that, in that shape or form, help in building public trust in a democracy that's growing like us?
I think a lot of the things we are usually talking about is based on perception. And for some time now, people don't feel that they trust government officials. probably because the kind of governance we have chosen for ourselves has not delivered the dividends that we expect.
Mm.
And so it's easy for people to lose hope in the system, to lose trust in the system. And to build trust basically is about accountable governance, if you ask me.
Mm.
And I think for a very long time, when you're talking about accountability, we are looking at it purely from a very political, lens, thinking that, okay, if a different party is in power, the opposition party must hold them accountable. But how does that seep into public service?
Okay.
And I think the issue around accountability, which can really build trust, has to deal with service delivery, has to deal with delivering governance, to the people. And for a lot of people, it's not too much to ask. And once these things are delivered, you can build trust. If you take government and sort of juxtaposes as an individual politician, there are instances that you can have one person being re-elected over and over and over again. And it's simply because his constituents trust him.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then when you question into why they keep voting for that person, it's because he responds to their needs. And
Yeah.
so if you then look at it from a national point of view and you're looking at it from governance point, I think it basically comes to delivering what the people want.
Interesting.
Because that's the essence of democracy. Right?
You're a lawyer, so I'll come back to you on, regulation. Is it about time we look at what people can post about their leaders, can say about their leaders online? Because, within the space, one major concern is that we have a burgeoning digital space that is not really regulated, and there are so many downsides to that. So I'll come to some legal perspectives from you on that one. Kweku, Joshua makes an interesting point around the fact that our democracy hasn't yielded the kind of dividends we want to see, and that in itself is a challenge. Following the conversation we're having, do you also get the impression that, yes, the conversations are moving online, yes, a lot more people have the opportunity to jump in it, but it is not. So what's the point?
Exactly.
They're talking online, but I'm not seeing any results. So should we still? Is it even something that we should still, talk about?
Yeah. Two quick points. I mean, as to the movement is growing, in particular on social media. There's a lot of because I've been on X for a long time, but now X is very politically aware.
Yeah.
2-3 years ago, the conversation on X among young people were completely different. It's about some boy here, some woman here, but now it's very aware. In 2022, I don't know if I get the timeline right, when Fix the Country started, it was based on a viral tweet, one hashtag at a time. The next thing we knew, the very day the movement had become so big, every single important minister had been hauled into a meeting. The very next day.
Which
When the Fix the Country movement started just on X. And then they started, we're going to do a protest. The next thing we knew, National Security Minister, Interior Minister, Minister of Finance. See, organized labor, when they are demanding things, it is very difficult to get some of those ministers in a meeting.
Yeah.
Young people who were nobodies, Kalite and Co at the time, who knew them, all they had was their phones and their social media.
Talking about
and their voices.
the issues in the
Exactly.
So they see like a pothole somewhere.
Exactly.
They take a picture.
And
They
we were
go to
talking
the
about
hospital. There are no beds. Then they put it out there.
Talking about it and demanding that you must fix the country. The next thing we knew, everybody that was important in the government had been put in a meeting to go and do that. So young people must always know that their voices matter, but how you go about your voice and pushing it is instructive. So when you push it and you push it hard, you are strong enough, those who matter will hear it. And of course, there's absolutely no guarantee that simply because the politicians have heard you, they'll act. That is why the next election cycle exists.
Yeah.
Then you go out there and you make your voice known. And perhaps some would say that the election results in Ghana's last election reflected some bit of that. And then to the substance of the question you asked. Of course, I agree completely with the Joshua that the democracy that we've practiced in this country in particular, on the continent, it hasn't yielded the kind of dividends that we expect. We've been changing government after government, but we still lack some very basics in terms of the conversation, some of the things that we really need to be able to get out there. Of course, it's a continuing process. And I think about it all the time. Listen, this is a country that's almost 70 years. We have so much money to spend on all sort of things. Yeah. And there are so many schools under trees. You go to the northern regions, they are even down south, central region, western region, people are learning they're in a pen.
The pushback to your democracy points is that, see, like they say, to appreciate, the where you're coming from, you need to look back, right? So 30 years, and of course, democracy of a country, 30 million plus, it can be noisy, but we've made some significant process or progress. So it may not be where we want it to be, but I'm sure you agree with me that in spite of it, we've made some significant gains. And if you look in the sub-region, it still seems we are a shining example of what a democracy like ours can be.
And I think that's the complacency.
Yes.
Because
really,
it leads to mediocrity.
Anytime we try to
but what's the alternative?
Ghana with
the sub-region,
with other countries. But the point is, we have always tried to demonstrate leadership. But do you think the model we currently have and the standards, it's something worth copying by any other country?
We have a stable democracy. We have a relatively credible electoral process.
Relatively, I'm glad you use relatively.
We have institutions that function. We have a military force that is very independent and respected on the continent. We have a police service that serve with integrity. I can vouch for the Ghana police service. Of course, it's not a perfect institution, but you wouldn't even say in the US, will you say the FBI is a perfect institution? Not quite. So every institution they have it's got
human institution.
Exactly. So let's give credit to our young democracy.
But I think sometimes we dwell so much. We
30
dwell
years,
so much.
Relatively, comparatively, I think it's a young democracy.
I can agree it's young, but I think we dwell so much on the things that we could actually be doing better. And that leads to the complacency we are talking about. We hear, colleagues from different African countries, when they've had experiences in Ghana, they tell you good stuff about our country and how institutions may be working. But are you happy with how some of these institutions actually...
It can be better.
It can be better. That's the
point.
And
acknowledge the progress we've made.
I think that should be the crust of the conversation. How we can get better.
Interesting.
It's a growing democracy. Right.
It's a growing democracy. These are my words, or the words of my panelists today, helping us through a conversation on Africa's youth bulge. Why have we been talking about this? 60% of the populace or the population on the continent, 25 years and below, they are getting more loud on social media. But is that bringing any positive? Is that a net positive? We are looking at that and more on CDD-Ghana's Youth Unplugged podcast, proudly brought to you by CDD-Ghana and also the IDRC, International Development Research Center. I'll take a quick break. When we're back, there's a lot more. Don't go away. Welcome back. You make an interesting point about complacency.
Yeah.
And I get the sense at which you talk about that. But let me come back to justice. Again, in the student space. There was a report, the Afrobarometer Round 10 survey, which spoke to the despite the huge numbers we see amongst young people being online, we don't see that same engagement around democratic processes, their interest in priorities of a government, elections, what government uses their taxes for, all of that. They don't really seem to care. And there was even another report by the National Commission for Civic Education, which said that young people between the ages 24 and 17 were less likely to vote than those of a higher age bracket. Is it a concern to you that despite the fact that the population with a huge digital presence are not necessarily interested in issues around democracy and democratic processes?
Yeah, Jude, it's a big concern because I have experienced this before. In the University of Ghana, you realize that there were times that there were issues that you clearly need support of your colleagues to ensure that management do something about it. But people are largely indifferent. They won't show up for.
Let me catch you for a minute.
Okay.
I think that part of that is the so-called grown-ups having noticed how important the youth voice can be.
Exactly.
And having taken means to actually silence
To
that. So when I went to Legon, at the time I went to Legon, the student voice was as important as it could get.
Yeah.
Joshua, same for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and our time at things had even started getting
Declining.
worse. So the Joshua, and I was in SHS and I was following what's going on in Legon. I used to follow campus exclusive on radio, the kind of conversation with Big Dad and all those guys, and how they could speak out. And then management finds ways.
So you see the management issue.
And now when you go to University of Ghana, it's literally a senior high school. There are no student gatherings.
Are you blaming young people for that?
No,
you know,
it's two way. But first, the adults, especially those who want to exert a certain influence on you, and they know you have a very powerful voice, they find a way to drown that. Okay, so one of the most important voices in this country, by way of youth, has been student leadership.
Yeah.
But now it's gone. It's dead.
So like the
NUCs,
youth
USAG, SRCs, it's not there. In fact, there are public universities in this country where they are not even holding election. Management keep appointing people every year and then because they keep
So is that as a result of the indifference of the youth?
It started
that
with,
has given rise to.
I think that it specifically started with those in authority specifically seeking to kill that voice. Because then they
really?
know, and I use that. I use that deliberately
There's
because
a deliberate attempt
yeah,
to do that.
because these people know that, and sometimes it's not necessarily for a very, very bad purpose. Because they just feel like you are unreasonable, or they feel like you just keep throwing spokes in our wheels.
Yeah.
So let's silence your voice, and then let's get our way. So now, if University of Ghana management decided to do anything, regardless of how unpopular it will be, there will be absolutely no one left to lift a finger. But gone were the days when University of Ghana, SRC, the Commonwealth boys, the Mensa Hall boys, Legon Hall boys, people in diaspora, they will always rally and do something. That is not there.
So Jude, you know what Kweku is saying is very true. You know, when I was in level 200, there was an increment in fees and residential fees, actually.
Yeah.
And from the communication from Parliament and all of that, GTEC communication to university management across the country was fees should be increased to not more than 15%.
Okay.
But we had almost 30% increments of fees in the University of Ghana. So by then I was serving as majority leader of the University of Ghana Parliament House. I petitioned
the use of majority leader is giving me PTSD.
So I petitioned the Speaker of Ghana's Parliament, and then a couple of media houses took up the petition. And you know what happened? What I realized was that there were students that were planted to come in a way, paint the petition that myself and a few others sent to Parliament as politically motivated. And that's what happens in the University of Ghana. When you are someone who do not stand with management, you are attacked to be
this or that.
And like Kweku said, there is a deliberate attempt, and I can say this because I've experienced this, I've seen it, and it's still ongoing, to ensure that young people, students of the University of Ghana, do not have a voice. So whatever that is handed over to you, you take it hook, line, sinker. You know, before entering University of Ghana, I used to follow campus exclusive, Parliament on
Radio Universe.
On Radio Universe, all of that. And, you know, I was moved by passion, the likes of Samson Tagbo, the rest. You know, these people were very vociferous. They were speaking to issues. And there is a trick that the university management use.
They're not here to speak for themselves. And you guys are just lambasting them.
We will not give you your certificate. They tell you that they award certificates. You don't earn it.
You can't substantiate.
No, I can substantiate that.
You have evidence.
I have people
were denied.
Let me tell you, my friends, some of them have been threatened. There are people that are not being able to graduate currently
because they took on
they took a position that is student oriented, and management feel like, no, you are anti-management and all of that. And any student of the University of Ghana, if the person is very objective, will speak to this issue.
You have to bring the evidence before we can't. But your point is well.
But so before I end, Jude, I will not blame young people for their indifference on issues about
but they are the most affected.
So this is the thing. the system we have a system where when young people show up, they are tagged. You are tagged as this, you are maligned, all of these things. And for me to show up, for me to be maligned, for me to be tagged, young people love our peace. They want their freedom and all of that. So they'll want to, if he or she is feeling a little bit okay, the person will stay in one corner and be moving on.
Interesting
Because
justice.
politicians seem to be the same, NDC and NPP. We just recycle the evil and we have it every time.
Julie, if you don't mind, let me just add a few thoughts on this. I think the indifference from young people really comes back to what they're getting out of the governance that they experience every day. And I think there's also a certain level of political consciousness which is limited among young people. That's a fact. And so, for an average young person, even if you were to ask them the relevance of voting, they are not seeing anything beyond doing a politician a favor.
Yeah.
So, if it comes to election and they're like, okay, I'm not voting, and you interrogate that decision further, the conclusion comes to, oh, you vote them, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at election as an accountability tool. They're also not seeing the political processes in between elections that they can participate for purposes of holding governments accountable,
Yeah.
which then brings back issues around protest. How do governments malign the system in order not to be unpopular? So if a student leader could really mobilize young people against a government policy, a university policy, in the end, it comes back to which government is in power.
Yeah.
And we also know the involvement of, high political officials in
Yeah.
election processes
Yeah.
at our various campuses. So you see all these ways of really controlling any voice of conscience, if there's any, among the student body politic. And that is a problem,
Interesting.
Yeah,
your thoughts, I think, are, and I think that's the consensus around the table, right? Let me come to you on the initial point I wanted you to address, the regulatory aspect of all of this. There are people who have said, see, it's time to regulate social media because of the the vitriol, the kind of things we see on there. I'd want you to talk to us around the role of the private sector, the role of civil society, like yourself, all we can do to ensure a digitally safe and open space.
That conversation keeps coming a lot of times, and there's always, these two sides to the conversation, whether you would really want to check what people put out there. Free speech, which touches on their rights.
Yeah.
And then one on handing over a certain level of influence or power or government or influence to the government or institutions to curtail what people actually want to say. And I think these sides to the conversation are both legitimate. I think the concern for me would be about hate speech, issues around disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. Because in the end, these are the things that people would act on without actually knowing that they are not true. So if there's going to be any curtailing at all, it should not be about people's freedom of speech, but primarily about the content. If it is wrong information, I think people should really be dealt with. Because people have used wrong information in different ways. And this kind of propaganda, sometimes not just the ordinary person, but even political actors. We've had politicians sit on set and say falsehood. Nobody holds them accountable in an attempt to target propaganda in a way. So the bit about, trying to curtail what people can say using the social media is also really a question as to whether you would want to deprive them of their freedom of expression. And if you truly want to do that, it should be within the confines of ensuring that, information is not really polluted with all the wrong kinds of information. You can't verify, AI generated. That is a problem.
Hate speech, misinformation, disinformation. But, it's a thin line between. So hate speech is when it seeks to malign, it seeks to, say very attack.
Ethnocentric comments, all these things.
Yes, but it's a thin line between that and, for example, so somebody can say something very hurtful and say that's my opinion. So do you not feel like there should be some level of legislation to say that, you can't say this and this and this about somebody on social media and go scot-free because there's a youth vouch and people are online and everybody like the jamboree.
I don't think you would necessarily go scot-free because the legal system is also there. If I feel you defame me by your speech or your comment on social media and I can trace that to you, I should be able to hold you accountable. And I think these things are there. The trick or the difficulty usually is when it involves a public figure. Because then there's a certain cloak that says that, okay, you're a public figure. People should be able to express their concerns about your office and all of that. But what we are also really missing out is what is a concern about a person's public office and a person's personal life. And we've had instances that politicians have succeeded in suing people who have said falsehood about them. But if you're looking at this from an ordinary point of view, it still comes back to the literacy as well, digital literacy, and the kind of things we teach people. Every person, for instance, if you look at it from the lens of ethnocentric comments, we all belong to ethnic groups. What do you say about a particular ethnic group that could be hurtful? Right? What is the potential of that statement to create some bit of conflict? These are realities. And I think sometimes you can leave a certain element to human judgment and discretion.
Interesting.
But that is where the risk then is.
Kweku, I'll come to you.
So like, just to add up, that there's a inbuilt in the system. Okay, so I'm very worried about regulating social media because, to be very honest, especially within the climate that we have, if you do that, you just give politicians and some people the opportunity to police speech and decide which ones they like and which they don't like. If someone defames you, you can go to court for defamation. If someone says something that distorts the public peace, there's a law for that. Even that, we know how that is being abused now, publication of false news and all that. So my view is that publication of false news, the law, is not simply because somebody has lied. For instance, somebody was at a stadium and he said that there's a bomb, and then everybody started running, and then there was such a huge stampede, people died. Then you can hold that person for that. But simply because someone said, okay, let's say the president has a second wife, or the president has taken some state land somewhere. So I'm very worried about conversations that will give politicians the idea that, listen, go and regulate social media. Because you see, like Joshua said, a lot of young people are not politically conscious. So a lot more of them are now getting, one second, a lot more of them are now getting that consciousness. Any attempt to try and limit that, you just send them back to the way they were. And by the time, they don't speak out.
Somebody's analogy of pouring water in a bottle and still forcing the water when the bottle is full. It's like, it's only a matter of time where everything just, but Kweku, again, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, we've seen what certain people have been able to come up with, where they deliberately, spew out falsehoods, like Joshua said. Do you not think, again, that with a growing, ecosystem digitally, we should be seeking to put out some legislation to guide the use of not only artificial intelligence, but anybody else? Because see, we are all not safe. Right?
To be very honest, I used to be very absolutist in my thinking about speech and all of that. But every now and then I get to the point where I feel like every now and then there may be some fetters here and there. We have a couple of some of these things already working in the system that kind of check some of those things. And so I'm very much open to any conversation that leads to change, that leads to doing every now thing in there. But I just know the African politician. And it's not just an African politician. Look at America. They are now stuck with Trump. And so it's possible you can make a law with the best of intention, and the guy to implement it the next 4 years or 5 years does not have the best intentions. So I just don't like putting the law there. I think when you make people very politically conscious, socially conscious, they're able to tell fake. So it goes back again into the education system, right from senior high school. Not necessarily even formal education, getting a topic and teaching people this or that. But people are very well. For me, I mean, recently there are videos on social media of Akroma cry, I can't know. Eagle coming to pick a kid, and then a dog stopped it. People believe it. That tells a lot about your education.
To fine tune.
That tells you about your education clearly.
But
because you just see a video, You just have to, of course, some of them are very, very sophisticated.
Yeah.
Okay. But a lot of other things, when you are just very careful and you take your time, you can verify some of those things. So we need a conversation. I agree. We can have a conversation with civil society organization, media, everybody, to try and get to a point where we can design something. But I'm just worried of the fact that you might just be giving a weapon to somebody to use it to abuse everybody.
Justice, I'll come to you, but Joshua, again, the AI concern,
Yeah.
and we've seen in light of some of the conversations that generated online, there were concerns around some politically exposed persons using bots on social media to fuel a particular agenda. So they have like hundreds of thousands of accounts, 100,000 accounts plus, all saying the same thing. And you know how it affects the algorithm to create a certain impression. So don't you think that, see, as a country, data protection commission, cybersecurity authority, National Information Technology Agency, NITA, all of those institutions under the Ministry of Communication should come together and say, see, we need a national plan to protect our youth, who many of them are online, from, of course, false news, the misinformation you talk about, and also AI concerns Kweku raise that seek to change public perception and also have their own underlining tones. You get what I'm.
No, I do, and it's once you talk about artificial intelligence, it's a very sophisticated space, and I don't think that a regulation would be able to really deal with this.
Really,
I don't think so.
but elsewhere in Paris, for example, conversations are being had.
But you should look at the nature of people in Paris. And it's not just a question of literacy rates. It's also really about digital literacy. For people to be able to decipher whether this information it's manufactured purposely to advance a certain agenda. And once you talk about misinformation and disinformation, geopolitical players are using this.
Okay, I get.
Within the
I get where
entire
you're driving.
region,
Yeah.
you find people, because of the nature of Africans, they try to push certain kind of information and people buy into it. There are a lot of people who are excited about Ibrahim Traore because of the things they've seen on social media.
Which might not be necessarily true.
That's the point. A lot of things about him even delivering speeches in English.
Which is AI generated.
And people believed in that.
So we need a framework then.
And so for me,
Why are you running
You-
away
you-
from the
the
framework?
reason, I think we try to simplify dealing with problems with regulations.
Yeah.
Which regulations don't we have in this country?
Yeah.
But still we have the issues
So
staring at us every single day.
the framework would also then, talk about how to enforce.
Trust me, there are regulations, there are plans, there are strategies. Still there's failure. And the issues
it's a
are staring
mindset. It's
at
a mindset.
if you don't have a people or a critical mass of people who are able to question the things they see and know that this is wrong information or this is not right information, trust me, no amount of regulation can deal with that. Because most of these things is also bordering on international law. If somebody sits in US and manipulates information to Ghanaians, how are you going to hold the person accountable? So when you understand the sophistication with artificial intelligence and how it operates and all of that, and you look at your citizens, you should be asking yourself, are they able to actually decipher that? Just the simplicity of the product. This issue, somebody is telling me they believed in it. This person is having probably second degree, but they still believed in that video.
I get where you're driving this.
And sometimes it's not just even about what could be put on other platforms like Facebook, X, or anything, but in WhatsApp, for instance, is between me and another person. We can be having conversation. It could easily be forwarded. Nothing to really stop these things.
It's still
It's a sophisticated space, if you ask me, and I don't think regulation could necessarily resolve it beyond having a critical mass of young people who are digitally sound and literate.
interesting. Interesting viewpoints from my panelists for today's discussion is the CDD Youth Unplugged podcast. We're looking at Africa's youth bulge, the numbers, safeguarding the space to ensure that it's a healthy and a less hostile space for active engagement, active conversations on issues that matter to us as young people. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by CDD Ghana and supported by the IDRC International Development Research Center. My panelists are sharing their own views. It doesn't represent that of CDD. It's important we mention. We've said a lot today.
Yeah.
What will be your key takeaway from all that's been said?
All right. So, Jude, for me, with the youth bulge that we have in Africa, it presents to us an opportunity and then a risk. And the opportunity that it presents to us depends on how our leaders leverage on the youth that we have on the continent to be able to chart a future for the continent, right? Our president, John Dramani Mahama, when he spoke at the United Nations, he said the future is African, right? The future will only be African if African leaders try to implement policies to drive the change that young people need and invest in young people. In the 1960s through to the 1980s, South Korea and Singapore did something, and that is investing in young people, investing in their education, investing in their growth, their capacity building, and all of that. And today, Singapore and South Korea are at a level where we can't compare ourselves as a country and as a continent. So what we need to do from whatever conversation we've had is that I see that there is an opportunity for us as a people, and there is also the risk. The risk is where you have educated young people who are not employed and want to, at all means, have something to do. And if you are not giving them this, you try to force them into vices and issues that they
Are
shouldn't
not
find
really
themselves,
healthy for a
like
country like
we
us.
saw in the Arab Spring. And when you look at all these extremist groups that we have on the sub-region and even on the continent, you find some of the most intelligent young people among these people.
Absolutely.
And it's because these people feel like the leaders that have been given the opportunity to ensure that something is done about the very problem they elected them for are not doing anything about it.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
that is the thing.
interesting thoughts around this. Thank you so much for your time and for this really important insights you brought to the conversation. Joshua, the way forward, really, a lot has been said about what we can do better, regulatory or not legislation or not, just put it all together for us as well, and also touch on very briefly the way forward towards safeguarding and making the space more friendly.
I think it's really important that African governments and that of Ghana really understand the opportunity that comes with the youthfulness of the population. And of course, with what Justin also said, the risk that comes with really not addressing their needs. Because it's easy to mobilize using the digital platforms, but it's also easy to hold them accountable using the digital platforms. And we've had successful examples of Fix the Country, which at least the muscle has been moved, right? And once that acknowledgement is realized, the next step really is what they need.
Yeah.
And I think for a very long time, most politicians would deal with young people as just numbers and voters.
Yeah.
And young people also need to cross that stage of seeing themselves as just adding up to the voters register. And
I like that.
That comes with a certain consciousness, which may be lacking. It could also really be based on the nature of our educational system. Civic education is limited. People are jumping into different narratives, not really understanding why some things are happening that way and all. And so if you ask me, I think that political consciousness is really important because through that political consciousness, people would know that development or politics or participation in government is beyond just the elections.
Yeah.
It's also really knowing what has to be done and whether it's done or not, or whether it can be better. Talking about, young people again, for the next 20, 25 years, more than half of the young people, more than half of the global young people will be on the continent.
Yeah.
Right now, if you ask me, Ghana's position on the continent, I think a lot of people like Ghana and see Ghana as a preferred destination for whatever reason.
Especially in December.
So whether you like it or not, the numbers are going to increase more.
Yeah.
And what does that come with? It comes with a lot of pressure on our resources. It comes with a lot of pressure on leadership. It comes with a lot of pressure on families.
Wow. 30 seconds.
And
Do you get a sense that the right conversations are being had on social media among young people?
I think it's just part of the stages in life. And every conversation is right. It can be silly. It can be funny. It can be interesting. It can really be nothing at all.
Yeah.
But of course, it's a platform.
The first time I heard the word mukui and in Koso, I'm like, is this the best we can talk about on social media?
I mean, I don't
it's
fault
mooks, eh?
people when they are not having, in quotes, the most important conversations that border on development or politics. Maybe some of the conversations are really important to give them good night's sleep. It's fine.
It's fine. The only thing is that it shouldn't be hateful.
It shouldn't be
It shouldn't
hateful.
misinform.
Yes.
It shouldn't disinform. And mention another one. Malinform.
Malinform.
No, Charlie, I love that. Kweku.
Yeah.
They say there's estate, Twitter,
And I've been going to
And I've been going-
whatever that means. But obviously, I like where Joshua takes it from because, of course, people must have conversation. And even in the US, I mean, it's not always conversations about the economy, about the democracy. There are segments of society that likes to have whatever conversation.
Cultural
In
conversations.
the media, this
Yeah.
afternoon, in the morning, in the evening, when you tune on your radio, there are certain channels that are discussing this. There's a
There's
Antenna.
a youth
There's a-
platform
yes.
also talking about entertainment related
Exactly. You
stuff.
go to some place, you are discussing
Relationship-
who had sex with who.
relationship tips, yeah.
You know, it's all good. Let different segments of society have different kind of conversations. So
Yeah.
what I just want is the people that are very politically conscious. So even if whatever conversation they're having, they must have at the back of their mind, they must be able to decipher a few things.
Yeah.
And that is crucial for me.
Interesting.
When you're able to have that, and even you are not having that conversation, because like I told you at the start of the show, 5 years ago, the kind of conversation that happened now on X, it didn't happen.
No.
Because I'm saying it's a big conversation now in the past few years because it started from X.
X.
Honestly. And every now and then, the media reflects that. The kind of solid conversation that goes on there. So it will get better, but these conversations are all the things that, because mind you, some of them are silly, but that is how people test their
Joshua says
analytical.
if it gives you a good night's sleep,
Exactly.
it's fine.
Even in that, people still test the analytical skills, how they're able to analyze a few things,
Yeah.
and then they graduate.
But very importantly, it should also head towards a population or YouTube population that's politically conscious.
Definitely.
Amazing. And that will be the final words of my guest on today's edition of the CDD Youth Unplugged podcast. Very insightful conversation, I must admit. Guys, the message out there is that be involved, right? Join in the discussion. Be interested in who leads you, what their motivations are, what their priorities are, what they use your taxes for as you discuss Mukui and all the other things. Also be very interested in what your elected officials think of your country and think of you as a young person. My name is Jude Duncan. Thank you so much for doing the watching. Catch you same time next week. Bye-bye.